Clerk?
Mr. Avery?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yes.
Chairman Rosie?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Roundtree, you're now part of the meeting.
Thank you.
With that, do we have any amendments, or do we have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Motion for approval.
Any further discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Avery?
Yes.
Mr. Jefferson?
Yes.
Mr. DeStefano?
Yes.
Ms. Roundtree?
Yes,
Chairman Rosie?
Yes, so moved. Don, would you help us with our invocation tonight?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day and for this opportunity to gather. We thank you for such a beautiful day and for the weather that we have enjoyed on today. We ask now that you would that you would allow us to be in your presence, that you might guide the thoughts and the words and just the deliberations of this meeting, that we might work to provide the best services possible to the citizens of our community. We ask that you would continue to bless those who serve our community in public safety and those who serve our citizens at large. We ask that you would continue to guide our minds, our thoughts, and our hearts, that we might do what is in your will, for it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. Randy?
So the first item on the agenda was a presentation from Dennis Bagley, Executive Director for the Southeastern Public Service Authority, our landfill provider. He has been stuck in traffic for about 30 minutes on 64, so he texted me a few minutes ago and said his GPS indicates he'll be here at 6:15. So if you would like, we can start some of the budget discussion before he gets here, and then we can just, when he comes in, let him do his presentation.
I think that'd be good.
Okay?
Any opposition to that?
So I'd like to start, I've sent you several emails over the last couple of days and some today. Just to give you an update. We went and met with the school system on Monday. I met with Mr. Very, and then Mr. Robertson and I went and met with Dr. Kramer, Dr. Coleman, and Mr. Very on yesterday, just to clarify some of the information we received from them about their surplus and what their plans were for that, and then any updates they had on their state funds. So, you know, we heard and they confirmed that they're anticipating, and this doesn't have anything to do with the slides right now, so they anticipate that they'll have a roughly $3 million surplus at the end of June, and it's all from lapsed salaries, so they haven't received any additional money, but they are anticipating a shortfall from the state probably in the $750,000 range because of the number of students. And so the numbers are, they budgeted based on, they'd estimated 5,410 students in the current fiscal year, back when they were preparing the budget last year. The numbers came in at 5,300 and some change, and then it was about 78 students short. So this is going to be, they initially estimated between 615,000 and 900,000, but they think it's going to be somewhere in the middle there. So that the surplus will help cover that shortfall. Initially, when we received the budget from them for FY26, it talked about a shortfall for FY26. I didn't understand that they were going to have a shortfall in this year as well, but that's it will impact this year's budget. Then they received notice recently or a few months ago that the governor has proposed a $1,000 bonus for all school employees, but of course they only provide a portion of that because they're based on the number of SOQ students or staff you have. Well, that's, doesn't cover even half of the number of employees. So the amount they're estimating from the state is 610,000, but it will cost another 750,000 to give that bonus to all employees. So they'll be using, again, part of the $3 million to cover that, because that was an unanticipated expense, much like, and as some of you remember, the 2% bonus the state gave the employees a couple years ago, and, we were, had to cover that. Then lastly, they want to transfer $1 million to their healthcare fund to shore up their health insurance program. Right now, they have about 1.3 million in their fund, and they would like to get that up to 2.3 million. That will help cover anticipated claims and also help to cover any run out of claims if they switch over to the local choice next year.
Can I interrupt you just for
Sure.
a moment? I believe we have Pastor Dan that was here for the vacation this evening.
Oh.
We apologize for missing that, sir. We've been so involved in this budget, and we just,
Don't even
Anyway.
worry about it. Really, Don's prayer was great. Really was.
okay. We really appreciate you being here. Again, we got busy with, trying to get back onto the budget and all, so. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Randy, but
that's all right.
we start diving into this, I don't even feel like he's obligated to have to listen to all of these numbers and stuff this evening. But thank you, sir, for being here this
Oh,
evening.
absolutely. Yep. God bless y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that will leave their surplus somewhere between 350 and 615,000, based on what the final numbers are. But that's what they anticipate having, after you deduct all those items. Are there any questions about that? I know that was we had some discussion about it, but I didn't have all the details the other night, last week.
I had a couple, because I was going through what you had sent to us earlier in the week and everything. And under the Isle of Wight County School intends to use $750K FY 25 funds to ensure all Isle of Wight employees receive a $1,000 bonus. And so I highlighted that. It says, this is not just teachers, this is all employees of the school system.
Correct.
Okay, so that, you don't happen to know what the number is with just the teachers, how many employees that is, and then when you add everybody in, what that number would be?
I do not.
Okay. Let's see, and then,
Well, because there's three definitions. There's SOQ staff,
Right.
which includes, all sorts of classifications of employees. Then you have teachers and clinicians, which is the STEP plan. Then you have the rest of the employees. So it is there are multiple definitions.
okay, well, that was the main one I had on that. And I guess we'll discuss that a little bit later on, and that is their shift in plans on the healthcare fund. And just, I would love to hear from HR, but they're not here, how the program that they're looking into going into versus being a part of our plan, what the difference would be, as well as what the difference would be if it would actually lower the costs by adding that number of additional employees. If there would
We
be
do
a
not
benefit.
want their employees on our plan. They would raise the cost
Okay.
because their claims are much higher.
That's what I wanted to know.
Right.
Okay.
And so they're looking at joining the local choices. They would be their own entity joining the plan.
They mentioned that last night. I just wanted to make sure there's some clarification on
Right.
that. Because a lot of times I know in our company, if we purchase, say, another company and then bring them in, when we add numbers to what we do, it reduces our overall cost per employee.
It depends on the type of
Right.
employee, yeah,
Okay.
the demographics.
That answers that question for me. Any other questions? No? This time? Okay.
So that gives you some information. So they anticipate they would, like I say, somewhere between 350 and 615 after taking out for these three items. And of course, then that money will come back to the county, and then the board, typically decide whether to use that for, and sometimes in the past you use it for capital funds, or, it could just stay within the county's coffers. There's another, I did pass out another item that shows the effective machinery and tools tax rate in the region, and Mr. Gwaltney compiled this information. I know the board has talked about looking at, the rates for our current machinery and tools. Right now, our rate is $1.95, which was a 20-cent increase from what it was a couple of years ago. The board raised it 2 years ago from the $1.75. Now, our effective rate is 78 cents. So if you look at the final column on the right, it shows what the effective rate is based on the depreciation rate. So every community has a different depreciation rate. We use 40% depreciation, which is, you see, ratio. So we're near the bottom in the region, but the two localities just below us, Chesapeake and Suffolk, would be our main, or usually our main competitors for businesses. So you can see how it changes. And it's interesting, Virginia Beach has a 0 machinery and tools tax rate. So they've had that for quite a while, I believe. Everyone else starts at 60 cents and goes on to $1.92.
So you would say really our current rate right now, the effective rate, could be a drawing card for anybody that actually want to come here to do business?
Well, that's what, I know that we've talked about that with economic development staff, Mr. Gwaltney, about, where is the number that is the sweet spot, and that's an unknown number, because, a lot of companies will look at those numbers and, we might get passed over before we even know it, because they've checked out what our rates are and things, and so there's a lot of factors that companies do research on now before you even know they're looking.
Yeah, because I was thinking, we compete with, probably with Chesapeake and Suffolk, and their effective rate is quite a bit lower than us. So if I was a businessman and I wanted to come here or in this locality, I'm gonna be looking at those two places, not out of White County.
Well, and before our effective rate was 70 cents, when we were at the $1.75. So we were still above Chesapeake and Suffolk, but, a smaller amount.
Right.
So we were a little bit closer. So we're still in the same position, just a little bit different.
Get cheaper real estate and all that.
Exactly. There's a lot of
There's a
factors to look
trade-off.
at. I think the fact that we're in that bottom tier of the region helps us. The question is, what number is too high?
Would it be appropriate to ask Mr. Gwaltney to
Yep.
kind of speak to this?
Yep.
Do you mind, sir? Do you mind, Bob? So, some of this is new, some of it's a refresher, and there might be somebody that actually cares to watch this to figure out what we're really talking about. And I guess it's probably a tall order to ask you to kind of condense or give us kind of an oversight, and then maybe your professional opinion on things that may be considered as far as trade-offs. We just talked about, real estate, for example. Somebody may be willing to absorb some of the tool tax if the real estate, et cetera, so on. Do you know I'm getting at? Just kind of an overview of what we're looking at, what's being considered when we look at this in regards to M&T. Do you mind?
When you look at this chart, it's like Brandy's saying, we are regionally in the lower rates. And if you have a manufacturer that's looking to relocate or open up a new place, I think this is one of the first places that they look, is how much is machinery tools taxed, more so than their real estate tax. One thing to keep in mind is we have Pure Green Mountain that is closing as of yesterday, I think. Last year, they were about $875,000 in taxes, third largest taxpayer. So come next year, we're going to have that is going to be missing. And if the rate is adjusted up, it may keep some other industry from coming here because of that. I would think you want to try to fill that Green Mountain spot as quick as you can.
I think the discussion on the board, at least this, what I kind of caught was, not that anybody on this board wants to raise any taxes, was trying to diversify the tax base, if you will. This was just one avenue to look. And I had mentioned, I don't know, I'm using terms probably shouldn't, but some stability. People are looking to come here. We've got some relatively large buildings that are, Green Mountain being one of them, that we're hoping to attract somebody. I don't know, because I've never been in that type of business. Do you think, so even if you adjust it slightly, but if you start adjusting it, do they look at stability in that tax rate to predict? Or do you think they just look at the rate and?
I think they look at past history to see where the rate, what direction it's going. Is it flat? Is it moving up? I think they look for that. And another thing, maybe Mr. Keaton can address that. Your incentives are addressed towards machinery and tools. So that's where you want to make sure we can attract somebody in here. I don't know if I'm getting to where you want.
I believe so. I mean, some of it's, like I said, we've touched on it before. So the effective rate is when you consider, like you said, the depreciation, the value and the depreciation schedule and all that. That's where we end up with the effective rate.
You cannot take and look at the nominal rate column to see how much your manufacturer is going to do. If you want to compare regionally, then you'll take their assessment ratio times the tax rate, and that'll give you the effective rate, so you can compare apples to apples.
And Randy, this would be this is available for the public to.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we just prepare that based on public information from all the localities.
Before we went to our method now in M&T, believe we had the other method prior, may have been, about 8 years ago or so, where we kind of ran into some issues.
Right.
At that time, if you don't mind, how was the depreciation schedule? I guess that's the right terminology. How was that compared to what we do now?
At that time, we took 100% of original costs. That times your tax rate. And at the time, the tax rate was 70 cents, which gave you an effective rate of 70 cents. Courts threw that out as not being equitable, so we changed the assessment ratio to 40%, which is the same ratio we use for your regular retail industries. So all businesses were treated with 40% of original cost, and the board adjusted the rate accordingly.
I think it's interesting when the recommendation was perhaps to at least consider raising this, is with the exception of Southampton, all of our immediate neighbors pretty much are lower than us. And when you're talking about competition and pulling people in, I think you have to take that into account in the equation, because, you know, look, if I can go just a couple miles down the road and it's significantly lower, that's gonna make a difference when it comes to drawing in new business. Now, incentives can help offset some of that, but we don't know what their incentives are gonna be all the time. And that's a huge factor to consider.
I think your competition is Chesapeake and Suffolk.
While you're up there, would you mind talking about the information, the preliminary information you received, at least from
Right.
foods?
I guess two meetings back, we indicated that we would contact the top 5 taxpayers, machinery and tools, because their reporting is not scheduled to come in until May 1st. And we now have 4 of the 5 top taxpayers. The second largest taxpayer, which is the Gwaltney plant, Smithfield Foods, they have reported about a $350,000 drop in machinery and tools revenue for this coming year. A lot of that has to do with the equipment that has been removed and it's no longer operational. So the only taxpayer left to come in is the International Paper. Last year their numbers were flat. I'm looking for that any day. Right now we're looking a negative 350,000 from the forecast.
So as much as 1.2 million total between Green Mountain and them. That's next year's deficit.
But this will affect us for FY '26, Green Mountain won't affect us to FY '27.
But I mean, it's on the horizon. It'll be.
That will, yeah, but I'm saying this
Yeah,
year, we
I
got,
follow you.
yeah, we have this and that, and then you add that on top of that the following year. But normally, we wouldn't have received that information until, later this week or next week, but they did give us advance information about
That's significant in terms of, if you will, $1 million plus going out the door.
I don't think I'll ask Mr. Walton to come up here anymore. Gracious.
I didn't know if, perhaps Renee or you had more to comment, because you guys had talked about the possibility of machine and upping it a little bit.
My thoughts on this are generally aligned with what's already been said, knowing that this is, there's gonna be lowering revenues in years to come, and also knowing that with the cost share with Franklin, that I believe it's 80% comes to the county, and another 20% goes to Franklin, that even a raise there wouldn't be as, it would have to be a pretty substantial raise there to make a difference, and I don't think, I would think that the disincentive to the businesses would be worse than, you know, the worst case there.
I agree. Renee, Ms. Roundtree, any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'll go with the majority. I very much view Hampton Roads as a region, so I understand that we're in pretty close competition with Chesapeake and Suffolk, but, you know, I can also pick out localities that are more towards the top of that list for the effective rate for M&T. So I do still believe we can bear some sort of increase without being out of market, so that is my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
So, if I may, just so we go down this road and see what it really looks like out in front of everybody. So if you adjust the rate, the M&T rate, how much of an adjustment do you make to, say, 1 penny in the tax, real estate tax rate?
I think the previous estimate, before we learned, well, we won't know for sure until we receive all the returns in from the companies, but before the drop that we learned about from Smithfield Foods, 1 cent of machinery and tools tax would generate about 31 cents of taxes. But that's gonna be a lower number now with foods going down. So less than 30 cents per penny of machinery and tools tax.
And for clarity on that, the 31,000 per penny, of which the county receives approximately 80%, or that already counts the 80%?
Well, it depends on whether that company is in that Franklin revenue sharing district. So you have you have the largest one in the Franklin revenue sharing district, but then Smithfield Foods is not.
Okay.
So it's just the ones in that close proximity. But it includes, IP, ST Tissue, Franklin Lumber, they're all right there together.
Randy, I know that in that revenue sharing agreement, when we had the, call it legal liability that Franklin shared with us, and they were basically being credited on their 20%, when does that run out?
5 years, just 5 years. So it was about $1 million payback, and we're crediting it for 5. So this will become a year 3, I believe, or year 2.
Point is, it's not gonna hit next year, it's drying up, so.
Yeah. Any other questions on that? Looks like Mr. Bagley is here. If we want to switch over to
Yes,
Simpson now,
we
and we
can do
can,
that.
he's been sitting in traffic for a while, so we appreciate you coming all the way from,
We will rotate.
we'll switch to this one. So while he's coming up, we could just recognize Mr. Bagley is, I'll let him introduce himself more, but he's the Executive Director of Southeastern Public Service Authority. And we also have one of our fellow board members from SIPSA, Mr. Dale Ball. Of course, everyone knows him, and he and I currently serve on the board together as the Isle of Wight representatives. And he'll be going off the SIPSA board January, because he'll be term limited, and so now that is a governor appointee, so that's a little bit different process. The board has to submit names, and then the governor picks one of the 3 names. Mr. Bagley, if you want to
Thank you. I gotta start by apologizing. I hate to be late for anything. My dad told me when I was a little kid, I was growing up and going to work, and I was late for work one day because I had a flat tire, and he said, well, you ought to leave in time to be able to be there if you gotta change a flat tire. And I tried to live by that, but this traffic is something else. Like I was on 64, dead stop traffic. I had to back up and turn around. They were turning around traffic, and then when my second route was through the tunnel, and then it was backed up. And then to beat all things, I get on 258 and I get behind a tractor. So everything that could happen did happen. But I appreciate you having me here tonight to talk to you about what's going on with SIPSA. You know, as I was here a little over a year ago, and kind of clued you in on where we were going. Told you I'd be back with another report once we got further along the process. And that's really what we're here for tonight. And to answer any questions you might have, I know you certainly probably have questions, and I'll be glad to try to address them if I can. So what I want to talk about tonight is, again, I want to reemphasize the expansion of the regional landfill, why we need it, what we're doing there, and that's to ensure safe and reliable disposal for the region for many, many, many years to come. In order to do that, as you know, we put out an RFP for some type of alternative waste disposal, so we wouldn't be putting that waste in the regional landfill. I'm going to talk about that, the future of recycling and what that means to the region. Then we'll talk a little bit about the use of support agreements, give you some facts about the project, and then let you know what the next steps are, and I answer any questions you might have. So here again is the regional landfill. This cell here is cells 1 through 4, and that is completely filled and been closed, and it's been in post-closure for about 19 years now, so it's very close to being finished up and out of the program. This is cells 5 and 6. They're currently being filled now. We're close to capacity. This section down in the bottom right is cell 7. That is permitted, and we're putting out an RFP around the 15th of this month for construction of that cell. And then these two cells are 8 and 9, which we have asked for wetlands permits to expand the regional landfill into those two cells. The final EIS has been published. We're waiting for a record of decision. The EIS said that the expansion of the regional landfill was the least environmentally damaging practical alternative. So we feel pretty confident that those two cells are going to be permitted to the Wetlands Board. And then the sad part about all that is this is the part of the master plan. This was cells 10, 11, and 12, where I have the cursor at now. In order to get these two cells permitted, because they were impacting 109 acres of wetlands, we had to give up cells 10, 11, and 12. We were kind of in a position where you give up 10, 11, and 12, or you don't get cells 8 and 9. So the SIPSA board made the decision that this was the best path to take at that particular time. So we've got environmental easement that will be put on this section, and that will be no further expansion at the regional landfill once these two cells are expanded. So why expand? The current permitted capacity is 9.8 million cubic yards. That cells what's remaining in cells 5 and 6 and what we have permitted in cell 7. The average waste going into the landfill, including cover, is about 506,000 tons a year. The permitted capacity for the regional landfill at that rate will be reached in 2034. So why permit cells 8 and 9? 8 and 9 will give us another 16 million cubic yards and provide disposal capacity until 2060 if it's all approved. But there's no future expansion after that. So if we continue, and what this slide really should say to you, is if we continue putting waste in the regional landfill at the rate we're putting in right now, we will be out of landfill capacity in year 2060, and we'll have no place to take our waste except for a private landfill. and the closest private landfill is Atlantic Landfill. So, cells 8 and 9 expansion, the required environmental impact statement, as I've already told you, has been issued. It was posted on February the 28th on the Federal Registry. The comment period closed. A record decision will follow, and we're waiting on that. We expect it this month or the first part of next month. It was determined to be the least environmentally damaging practical alternative. We looked at sites all over the region, over 200 sites we started with, narrowed it down to about 3. 2 of those sites were in Southampton County, 1 in Suffolk. As you can imagine, the people in Southampton County were up in arms about it, and through public meetings, the Corps determined that was not an alternative, and then the site in Suffolk ended up being more wetlands impact than we would have at the site, the current site. So they were all eliminated, and that means there's no other place to expand in the region. SIPSA purchased mitigation credits, as well as some surrounding land around the landfill for mitigation of our impacts to the wetlands. And we did that ahead of time because we got the prices of wetland credits were going up and the inventory was going down, and the board made a very smart decision to direct me to go ahead and purchase wetland credits back a year and a half ago. There are no wetland credits left in the bank, and there are some that's soon to come on, but they're going to be well over $85,000 per credit. So when we bought them, we paid about $48,000 credit for the first ones, and then we paid a little more for the second group that we purchased. We want to make sure, part of my role, part of what I wake up every morning thinking about, is to ensure that the region has capacity for the future. And our current waste volumes, our capacity at the landfill, as I've already told you, will be done in 2060. That's at 500,000 tons per year, with the 16 million cubic yards that we have in 8 and 9, and then what's remaining in about 9 million cubic yards in the remainder of the landfill. SIPS has been exploring all kinds of options of how to maximize the remaining airspace, and it's pretty simple. You got to put less in there. If you keep putting the same amount in there, it's going to fill at the same rate. So we've looked at ways to reduce the volume going into the landfill, to conserve the airspace, in order to continue to provide a reliable disposal source for the region. So one of the things that we did almost a year and a half ago now is put out an RFP for alternative waste disposal. The evaluation team was made up of members of SIPS's board, SIPS's staff, financial consultants, attorneys, engineering consultants. You had a representative on that committee, and I think total there was 8 people that met regularly for the better part of a year and traveled all over the country looking at different sites, evaluating those proposals that were put in on the RFP. So SIPSA board passed a resolution after all of this work that the committee did. The SIPSA board passed a resolution in February recognizing Commonwealth Sortation as being the most qualified vendor that presented a proposal. And they directed me to finalize negotiations and bring a final contract back to the SIPSA board for their consideration. So alternative waste disposal, what is that? What we've selected includes a component that would remove and sort recyclables from trash. They would, see the blue cans and the green cans, or the recycle cans and the trash cans. There would be no more of that. It all goes into one can, and then it gets sorted using artificial intelligence and robots and air and some infrared scanners. There's a lot going on in order to get those recyclables out. It includes a component that we remove organics, which is about 40% of our waste stream. So those organics would no longer be going to the landfill. They would be actually recycled into something called biochar, which is a carbon sequestration product. It would increase the regional landfill life and provide disposal capacity through the end of the century. So if you take the 2060, and one of the guarantees that this firm has given us, and there's financial accountability for not meeting that 50% number, is 50%. So if you cut our waste stream in half, then that then makes the landfill last through the end of the century. So we'll provide performance guarantees not only on the percentage, but also the volume. That if we contracted with them to take 400,000 tons, they have to process 400,000 tons every year. Would increase the regional recycling rate while eliminating the blue can recycling. And you know, I've been in this business a long time, and I've worked through why people don't recycle. People don't recycle because they're lazy. When it comes to, you got a blue can in your backyard and you don't put recyclables in there, it's because you just don't, that's not part of what you do every day, and it's additional work, so people put it off. So you can educate and educate and educate. People are not going to recycle using a blue can. This project would represent a capital investment in the region of over $100 million, and the final contract would require a 20-year commitment. And as you can imagine, if someone's going to invest $100 million, they want some kind of commitment that we're going to provide them waste for that period of time. So the future of recycling. While conventional recycling costs are continuing to rise, and some of your counterparts are paying as much as $750 a ton to recycle. And they're getting about 6.8% of their waste being recycled. That's not a very good return on your investment. I don't think any of us would do that if it was our money. The recycling rate reported to DEQ by the PDC for the year 2024 was 25.8%. The Virginia DEQ sets mandatory recycling rates for the region, or not just for the region, for all of the regions in the state, and it really is dependent upon a lot of socioeconomic factors, but 25% is what our region is required to recycle. The solid waste planning unit fails to meet, if it fails to meet the mandatory requirement, DEQ could come in and say, put together a recycling action plan for us to consider, and then we'll let you know what you're going to do after that. So it kind of takes it out of our hands completely and lets DEQ determine what we're going to do to increase our recycling if we fall below the 25%. Using this AI mixed waste sorting process, we would easily meet that 25% requirement every year. Use and support agreements. The initial term of the use and support agreements between SIPSA and the member localities, it doesn't actually expire on June 30th of 2027, but 18 months ahead of that, each member locality has to notify SIPSA if they are not going to continue. So that means December of next year, we would have to know from each of you all whether or not you're going to renew your use and support agreements. If you elect to not say anything to us, they're just going to automatically renew for 10 years. You can certainly let us know, and then it wouldn't renew automatically. SIPSA has reinvented itself over the last 10, 15 years, and we've done an outstanding job of not only financially managing SIPSA, but operationally managing SIPSA. We've done an exceptional job. You don't have to worry about where your trash is coming to. It goes to the transfer station, and we manage it from there. And we will continue to do that, and we've proven that we can do that. And our use and support agreements that went into effect in 2018 were really solid part of that partnership that was SIPSA built between SIPSA and their communities, and the communities built between themselves and SIPSA. So we believe that those use and support agreements should stay intact as much as possible, but remember that we need to have a 20-year agreement in order to be able to even proceed further with negotiations with the contractor. So 2 options for the use and support agreements will be provided. We've heard Mr. Keaton loud and clear, along with others from those western communities, of where they stand on this. we're looking at what all members pay the same tip fee and get the same service. The other option would be one rate for alternative waste disposal, a second rate for landfill. And we're still in the process of putting all those numbers together, and you'll see in just a few minutes what that might look like. But these are just for the purpose of tonight's meeting. I want to kind of give you an idea of where we were. We're still not finished with our work in negotiating the contract. So we think we're close, but I'm going to give you some numbers that at least to take a look at. SIPS is requesting that each member community consider amending their use and support agreement, and we asked for an amendment only because the use and support agreements are solid just the way they are. And that amendment would extend the term to, it's actually going to look like 25 years because of the length, how long before we actually get a contract in place, when they can start processing waste. But it would be we're working off of a 20-year term, but the use and support agreement extension could be a little bit longer than that based on the contract. The current use and support agreements have served both SIPSA and the member communities well. SIPSA runs like a machine now. Our board meetings are pretty smooth. Everybody's on the same page. Everybody understands what's going on, and we try to keep the board informed. Contract with a third party to finance and construct and operate the alternative waste disposal project would require that SIPSA have the use and support agreements in place with the member communities. This is what would come first, the chicken or the egg. Do we sign a use and support agreement first, or do we contract first? We believe that the only way forward is to sign the use and support agreements with the existing. Each use and support agreement has on the back side of it standard operating procedures, and the use and support agreement is kind of like a big picture item, and then the details about what the disposal mechanism is part of the standard operating procedure that the board can change at the request of a board member or 75% approval by the full board after a change to that is presented. The tip fees proposed, this is part of my budget that I presented to the SIPSA board last month, that there's a slight increase due to cost that we're incurring for disposal, but it goes from $67 a ton next year, not this upcoming year, but FY27, because this represents what's the future. You already know that this year's tip fee is going to be $65 a ton. So in 2027 it goes to 67 until it gets to 70 in 2033. Now with alternative waste disposal, and I left this at 5 years because of the we are in intense negotiations now about how to escalate the price. We don't believe that Consumer Price Index or some other indices is the proper way to do this, because what you end up with a 20-year deal is you're paying way too much in the end. And we're trying to drive that price down for the long term. But over the first 5 years, it would go from $88 to $90 with what we're looking at right now. That's the difference in what we were talking about with standard, which is $70 a ton in 2033 and 2032 to $90 a ton and $89 a ton for those same years. Now, a couple of project facts is that landfilling is the cheapest short-term solution, no doubt. You can see it from the numbers. Nobody's going to try to tell you anything different than that. But our consulting engineers has projected that when the regional landfill was full in 2060, that the cost per ton for disposal would exceed $125 a ton if we continue what we're doing right now. So it's kind of like pay me now or pay me later. That's the whole idea of this. We're trying to get in front of it, because one of the things that you get into, if you don't have landfill space, you're at the mercy of those who do have landfill space. We're in a position right now where the landfills know that we can't take all the waste to the regional landfill because of the amount of capacity we currently have. So we've seen a $6 increase in tip fees from the landfills over the last 3 years. So when we don't have any landfill space, you can kind of imagine what's going to happen. Alternative waste disposal will divert about 50% of the region's waste away from the regional landfill, and at that 50% diversion rate, 2060 becomes having capacity through the end of the century. And all alternative waste disposal will provide the best long-term disposal costs for the region. Next steps, SIPSA is will be providing each of you, once the SIPSA board has approved it, each member community will receive an amendment to our current use and support agreement. That amendment is going to be very small. It's really going to deal with the term only. SIPSA member communities would execute a final version of the amended agreements when it's appropriate. Now, what does that mean? If this board of supervisors decided that they were going to sign that, it doesn't say you're going to use alternative waste disposal. All that says we're going to continue using the same disposal mechanism that we are currently using for 20 years instead of 10 years. Now, the next step, the final drafts of the contract for alternative waste disposal then would be presented to the SIPSA board, and they would review it and take whatever action that they saw fit. A draft revised standard operating procedure will be presented to the SIPSA board for review and action. Both of those items, both the contract and the review of the standard operating procedures, would take the 75% vote of the board of directors to approve. If they decided not to approve it, we would still be working from the same use and support agreement. It just would be for a longer term. But that longer term is important because we can't get to the next step unless we have the longer term in place. So I want to be clear about that. This request does not mean that you're signing up for alternative waste disposal or you're signing up for landfilling. It means you're going to continue to be a part of SIPSA just like you are now with no changes, except for a 20-year term. Any contract, as it says, for alternative waste disposal or any revision to the standard operating procedures would require a supermajority of the members, 75%. And each year, we're required under the use and support agreements and under the Waste and Water Act to bring back to our standard operating procedures one time a year for review of the board and action if necessary. We change those every year. Last year we changed it because we were taking everything to Wheelabrator. We had to specify that we're not taking the Wheelabrator anymore, we're putting it in a landfill. And then the SIPSA board would have to approve that. So there's still plenty of options to stop the contract. All we're asking for really is for the amendment to the use and support agreement to allow us to further the conversations with the contractor to see if we can come to a deal. And if we come to a deal, then the SIPSA board would have the option to do it or not do it. And it only takes 6 of the votes to block it. And there's western communities that do have 6 votes. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
So I got a question. We talked about, well, you talked about using robotics to separate the waste. But at the same time, I thought recycling had gotten too expensive for the locality, right? That's why we went away from recycling some things.
That was that's when we lost a lot of the markets in China. And then so this company has, I'm not sure about the differences, but I knew that was one of the big problems with some of the local companies is trying to find markets for especially the plastics.
And it's very expensive to process because you have to have a lot of labor. You may have to have 20, 25 people on a line over top of the waste to try to sort it. Robotics and AI allows you to do away with all those jobs, and those are menial jobs. Those are jobs that nobody really wants. And what's happened in the recycling market is it's hard to find people to fill those jobs. So if you've got a spot and you have nobody in it, when the waste comes past it, whatever they're going to pull out doesn't get pulled out by that person. So your numbers continue to go down. Well, robots they don't have a bad day. They don't get sick. They work every day, and you can put there's numbers that's been given to us about the number of things that we can pick off the line with one person, and then how many you can pick off with a robot. And it's tens of thousands more per day that you can do with a robot. So the AI identifies the material on the line, and then the robot or the air or the scanners will pick it up, detect it, and pull it out. And what's happened, why this has become so popular now, is because the recyclables, as Mr. Keaton was saying, you couldn't sell before because it was dirty. Now you can make it 99% pure. And I've seen this with my own two eyes. We've gone to visit these sites, and you'll have a conveyor going around, and you're looking at material on the conveyor, and they're saying, we're picking out clear plastic bottles, and we want 99% purity. So I'm standing by the line, a plastic bottle comes by me, and it passes by. I said, well, it just passed a bottle that it should have picked up. The guy says, no, just wait, it'll pick it up. Comes back around again, it doesn't pick it up again. I say the same thing to the man. He says, just wait, it'll pick it up. It comes back by the next time and it picks it up. And I said, I don't understand, why didn't it pick it up the first time? So he shows me a picture, and next to the picture is an aluminum can, and the bottle's right next to it. It didn't pick up the bottle because the aluminum can was right next to it. The computer was that smart to know that if you want it 99% pure, I can't pick that one up. It waits until it clears itself, and then it picks it up. So the purity of the material and the off-takers, if you're looking for this is a good example of why this is becoming the norm now. If you're looking for clear plastic bottles, and I can provide you 80% pure plastic bottles, and Mr. Keaton can offer you a bale that has 90%, and his is $10 more than mine, which one are you going to buy? Probably going to buy his, because the 10% that's not clear, that's out of my bale, you've got to pay to get rid of, right? So he's giving you a much cleaner bale, and he can get more money for it. So that's really the driving force behind this purity and the AI, and why they pick up certain things. I mean, they can even pick up UPC codes.
That's similar where our cardboard, because we have staff there to make sure that only the clean cardboard goes in our compactors. And so we're getting a premium price when we take it to Butler Paper or some other end user. And I think it's, of course the price ranges, but it's a lot of times it's over $100 a ton, because our employees at the sites are, making sure that only the right cardboard goes in there. Same thing with the metals. We're getting a premium price for our metals as well.
And that's something that Mr. Keaton and I have had, and staff have had a lot of discussion about. Even if you opt into this and we're sorting your waste, you still have the option to continue those lucrative things like collecting cardboard. If you've got people that bring cardboard to you, then collect it, and you can still sell it. It's not going to be stopped by the contract. The contract has been clear about that. If you want to continue, you can do it. I mean, even somebody who wants to have blue cans could do it. Now, I'm not sure why you would do that, because that's so expensive. Where what you all are doing is not that expensive on the county, but you're receiving good revenue from those goods that you're selling. So, any other questions?
So if this AI technology were to come to to SIPSA, would the material be processed on site there by the landfill itself, or would it be off site?
No, it will be this company is processing already off of Frederick Boulevard in Portsmouth, but they would be building the site on the old RDS site. I mean, on the old RDF facility right next to the shipyard.
So it would just be the material that you spoke of earlier, the carbon, the organics would be the only thing that would be transported then, and that would just vary, right?
Well, all of the recyclables would be transported off-site and sold.
Right, right.
And then any residue, because if you've got 40%, if they're going to process 50%, there's going to be 50% that's actually usable material. The other 50% is going to have to be transported. So there will be more transportation than just the biochar.
Gotcha. Okay.
The biochar is something that all of us taking chemistry in high school have done it. It's you apply heat to without oxygen, and it turns into carbon.
Right.
Any organic material will do that, and it's just a pretty simple process. We've seen it operate in a number of different locations, doing a number of different, I think I'm not sure if it's in Isle of Wight or not, but you already have a biochar facility here that's doing forestry products, not MSW, but it's doing forestry products. It's the same exact technology that's being used. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna comment to that. So what I heard you say earlier was that 50% of the waste disposal diversion rate is based on organic only, correct?
No, sir. 40% of it is organic, 20% of it is commodity, but they're only under a guarantee of 50%. Because they don't want to say we're going to do 60% and something happens, and you know the waste stream changes all constantly, and then they don't do but 55%. But they said they were going to do 60, and then we hold them apply a penalty to it. Okay. So they lowered that to 50%. So 50% is the total amount that will be diverted, but they suspect and have proven with the plant that they're operating now that 40% of our waste is organics, 20% of our waste is commodities, and we did a third-party analysis with CS Engineers about 1.5 years ago to do a waste characterization study, and our waste characterization study, which is actually hands-on, where they pick up a scoop of waste and they take it over here, and the person identifies every piece of waste in there as some type of paper, plastic, organics, whatever it is. Our numbers matched what they said they were receiving, so we're confident that that is, in fact, the waste stream currently.
Okay. Ms. Roundtree?
The only question I have, and you may have covered it, I apologize, but businesses are subject. I mean, their waste all goes to SIPSA as well, right?
Yes.
Just
Not all
residential
of it.
and all
That's
business.
that's something they can elect. We receive about 250,000 tons of commercial waste a year, but there's a lot more than that produced. Some of them go to bay disposal, some of them may go directly to Bethel landfill, but we receive it when it's convenient and cost effective for the carrier.
Thank you.
Nothing on this item.
Okay. No other questions? Randy?
One of the items we've talked about is right now the waste from the western communities is hauled straight to the Atlantic landfill in Waverly. And so that's one of the conversations we've had initially was, as Dennis just alluded to, that everyone would receive the same service. So the question was, would our waste continue to go to the Atlantic waste landfill, or would it go to the new alternative waste disposal? And that's one of the questions we've had, even to the point of maybe having different options for the west, because we're collectively, us, Franklin, and Southampton are only about 8% of the total waste stream in the region. So there has been conversations about whether to have two different methods, maybe if it was more cost effective to continue hauling our waste to the Waverly landfill, then we might have a different rate, or we could opt into the alternative waste disposal as well. So
There's still some options that the board needs to see, and we're working on those options now. So as far as cost goes, and Mr. Keaton's spot on with that. We currently operate on a system-wide cost. So we figure out what all of our costs are, and then we divide it by the number of tons you have coming in. That's what every community pays. And that's doesn't always work out to be fair, but in the long run, I think if you kind of measure everything, it is fair. Like for instance, Portsmouth for years has taken their curbside collection trucks have gone straight to the RDF facility. We had no transportation costs, and we had no cost for transfer station, and yet they were paying the same price that everybody else was paying. And I think that's the idea here, is to look at that and see how does that work, and what happens if we do have different rates.
Okay. No other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I've had the privilege of being on the SIPSA board
Name
for the last 4 years. My time is about running out. But I also spent 2 years as the chairman.
of that board. And when I took over as chairman, Lisa DeVere was the executive director. She put the board in SIPSA in an incredibly positive financial situation. Then the board had the wisdom to hire Dennis. Dennis is an expert. I've been able to lead many organizations in my time. This is one of the best led organizations I work with. They're safe, they care about their people, they're planning for the future. The brief he gave, I think, is very credible. So I think his recommendations are valid and things that the board should consider to extend the use and support agreement and then figure out how to deal with the technology and what's best for Alawai County. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would like to add also, Mr. Bagley mentioned that we've had a person on that committee, and it was Mike Etheridge, our solid waste administrator. So he's had the opportunity to go to all these different sites and see the technology in place. Of course, he said in his 35 years in the solid waste business, he's seen a lot of different technologies and ideas come about, and he said, this is by far the best opportunity to work. I don't think we have a situation where all of the pieces are in one location, but we've seen all the different pieces separately, and they all seem to work well. So this would be, a somewhat unique situation. If we're able to put it all together here, it could be a blueprint for the rest of the country. But it is a challenging task to try to deal with waste and all the different nuances that you deal with. And he mentioned about sorting the waste. That is the quintessential dirty job. If you want to sort through waste and analyze each piece of waste and categorize what it is.
And sometimes it's hard to wrap your mind around it. I know it probably would be for some of our citizens, as we're talking about issues that carry out to 2060 and beyond that. And I think that's very, very significant for us to understand that we have to prepare now for the future.
I'm sorry, I did want to say to you, I just slipped my mind, was I'll be glad to take anybody on a tour of the facility that's operating so you can see this technology working. It's working in Portsmouth. I can set it up anytime anybody from your board of supervisors would like to go see it. I'd be glad to take you over there. The company will have a representative there, go through it with you. You can see it firsthand. And also with the regional landfill, if you'd like to see what we're doing out there, I'm always available to take anybody on a tour of the regional landfill. We're proud of what we do there, and we'd be glad to have you come out.
Well, that might be something good that we could have a little tour, set up a van, a travel trip and all that, and talk about that for a future possibility.
You work through Mr. Keaton on that, and we'll be glad to set it up.
Great. Thank you very much. And with that, I think we'll return back to the budget discussion. And we were done on the machinery and tools discussion.
Yeah. Seemed like the consensus, well, I guess the question is, what is the consensus of the board as far as looking at other options for the machinery and tools tax?
My personal opinion is knowing that it's an option, but it was, at least in my opinion, the lowest priority option to achieve the other goals that were up there, including the school's #1 priority and the county's priorities. Understanding that the 1% tax rate may fall off based on the changes to M&T that we're seeing, revenues M&T that we're seeing. And so I think if we can, at least from my opinion, if we can get to the goals of, they're achievable without touching M&T, that would be the best solution.
I agree with that.
So you'd rather not touch M&T, as that's what I gather?
My concern is for becoming less attractive to other businesses like manufacturing and things like that if we touch M&T. Now, if we would need it to reach some of the other goals, then I think that would be something we consider, but I think Mr. Keaton has put together a plan that reaches those goals without raising M&T.
I think you bring up a very good point. You know, I struggle with it because we look at diversifying our tax base, which M&T is part of that. That's why we attract business. And but on the same token, you know, if only we had a crystal ball, then we would know whether or not adjusting a rate would not harm anything. But I don't know. Either way, it's gonna be scrutinized. I know, but rightfully so. But anyway.
My crystal ball that I'm rubbing is one to possibly try to attract manufacturing in areas where we would be, I think there'd be much satisfaction with manufacturing. I met with some folks today when we were doing a ribbon cutting and all, and we have, I think, a significant opportunity around the Franklin Airport area, Parkle plant, and which Franklin owns that plant and all that, where it could be torn down and it's already set up for industry and everything else, and perhaps we can maybe seduce is not the right word, but seduce some of the military opportunities with contracts and bring them into that area is one of my target areas that I'm looking into that I think would fit in well with the community. But if we can bring in manufacturing and put it into our growth plan and it be a part of the plan, and we can do it right, I think that's an opportunity that we need to be looking into, because that manufacturing just helps us so much in terms of our tax base that it's just like what we have with Keurig and IP and things like that. We need to be more than just 2 legs or 3 legs. We need to be multiple legs to help with that.
Okay, so if we can talk about, we sent another scenario out based on comments from the board at the last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question before you move off?
Absolutely.
So, you know, I understand that this is a race to the bottom, if you will, for M&T effective rate. I'm just wondering if, given all the cost pressures, to include, you know, the presentation that has just been so eloquently made, I feel like in the future, these kinds of rates will have to increase, just like we're wrestling with the residential, you know, tax rate increase. My question has to do, I'll get to my question, with to attempt to attract new manufacturing and businesses to further diversify our economic tax base. Is there any leeway with regard to economic development for offering incentives to new businesses coming in? So, you know, let's say we did increase our effective rate slightly in M&T, again, considering the news that we have with the decrease in value of current assets on our commercial site, the news we got from Smithfield Foods, et cetera, that, you know, luckily we have as insight. But aren't there ways through economic development to leverage any incentives to new corporations to come, new manufacturing, et cetera, that could possibly mitigate an increase to M&T, at least for the first few years, or again, to incentivize development?
We currently do that. We have an incentive program through economic development, and we have a pot of money set aside that we, you know, continually replenish that, and it is for a certain number. So, for example, and don't quote me on this, but I believe with Keurig it was for 10 years. It was they had an incentive package for 10 years. I know some of the other ones, ST Tissues package, you know, it usually expires after a certain number of years. So the first few years they do receive basically a rebate or incentive package based on the amount of taxes they paid. It could be in real estate, it could be in machinery and tools, and then, but it's all based on their capital investment. So yeah, the answer to your question is yes.
If the board is concerned with, you know, becoming less competitive when it comes to attracting new businesses, if we increase the effective rate, I guess, again, my idea is just that we still have tools available to us through economic development to mitigate some of that, to allay some of your fears and concerns with regard to attracting new businesses to our county.
Right.
So I may be in the minority, but still feel like it's appropriate to vote to increase, you know, somewhat the M&T tax, especially as we're wrestling with increasing a real estate, rate for our citizens.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Would you like- So, would you like me to go forward with the scenario then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the same format. You've got a copy of this on your sheet there with the different colors. So we went back and looked at items the board had talked about. So the items in yellow are highlighting yellow items we have changed either up or down from the last meeting. So the 350,000 here, that's a new item. We had to reduce the amount of the machinery and tools tax estimate based on the preliminary information we received from one of our larger taxpayers there. We don't know what the final number would be, but that is an estimate based on that, like I say, one of the largest top 5 taxpayers. We also went back and took another look at this business license revenue. We had bumped that up by 27,000, but after speaking with Mr. Gwaltney some more, we've taken that out because that seemed to be an overestimate there as well. At the last meeting we had in the county budget reductions, we had 139,500. We bumped that up to 185,000. So we went back and took another look at some of the items that could be reduced. And then the big item here is, and you'll see this on the when we get a couple more slides, is we had to take out the 1 cent reduction in the tax rate and basically would keep it at 5 cents. And I'll show you why as we go through this. One of the items the board had asked us to look at the other night was to add back in the fire rescue medics for at the Rushmere Station to make that a 24-hour operation. This would be the equivalent of 2 full-time. There would be 1 person beginning July 1 and then 2 people January 1. So to have the equivalency of 2 full-time, that would give us a 24-hour coverage at the Rushmere Station. And the reason January is because the new station will not be ready until January, but we do need 1 person to fill in some slots July 1 if we can find somebody in.
So Randy, if I may on that, as we discuss that, if maybe somebody sees Rushmere, I mean, I look at it, obviously, having that resource up in the Rushmere area is appropriate, but also look at it gives us depth with the medic units.
That's right.
Our Chief Winley, I'm sure, could speak to it and tell you how many times virtually, if not all, of our medic units that are staffed are committed on incidents. And that upstaffing that one allows us more in the cadre or as our medic units in the county, whether it's, I mean, they move them around, but I guess my point in bringing that up is it's a lot more of an impact than just Rushmere area. And I think it's more appropriate not put all your eggs in one basket and spread them out anyway. But anyway, I think that's why it's being reconsidered as I understood it again this evening.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We do have to shift ambulances around during the day when we have, large incidents in one area of the county. We shift them from one place to another, and this just gives us more options. And frequently we have all of them are committed, and then we're calling in volunteers to fill in slots as well. So, which they fill in anyway, but a lot of times, sometimes we're scrambling trying to find people to fill the slots or either call people back in. We'll get through when we get through the end. I'll explain the differences, but we were able to, with making all these changes, we're able to add back in $100,000 to the school budget and additional funding. I'll talk about that when we get to the end here.
May I make a comment about the FTEs?
Sure.
So given that this is a maintenance budget and things are tight, I'll start out with a qualifier just to say that I appreciate Supervisor Acree and Randy, your comments on adding the FTEs to Rushmere. I'm in favor of that. Given that this is a maintenance budget and we didn't feel like we were able to add any FTEs on the school side and everything's really tight, we've been given reports regarding vacant positions, long-term vacant positions. I guess I'll get to my question. To add the 2 sheriff's deputies as of January 1 with the pending hospital build and opening, et cetera, in January of 2026. My question is, to add the 2 FTEs in Rushmere, are there 2 FTEs out of the vacant positions, perhaps long-term vacant positions like building and grounds and the additional FTE on the economic development team? Are there other FTEs that we think we can delete for this budget year in favor of the 2 rescue FTEs? That's my question.
Well, we did take out 2 of the FTEs in the utility department. The only other department where we have a longer-term vacancy is the one in economic development, and that is a critical position we're trying to fill. We just haven't had very many applicants for that. All the other vacancies that we have are, just seasonal vacancies. You can always have, a couple vacancies in the sheriff's department or a couple vacancies in fire rescue as people leave and we transition to new people. So we don't really have any longer-term positions anywhere else other than utilities and that one position in economic development.
I think upon review of the long-term vacant positions, and I get it that a lot of times you'll hire somebody and then somebody else leaves. I believe from the vacant positions spreadsheet of long-term vacant positions that we were provided by our HR department, there's a 435-day vacancy on building and grounds, and forgive me, I can't recall the number of days that the economic development position has been open. But again, I guess I would just ask you to get out your pencil again, given this is a maintenance budget, to not increase overall total FTE count. If we could look at that again, since it sounds like we're in favor of the public safety option and adding the 2 FTEs in Rushmere. That's end of my comments with regard to FTEs.
Sure. So this is just a little bit of a summary of the significant changes. We did do an adjustment for the veterans tax exemption in the last meeting. We added the 2 deputies. We added the 2 vehicles for the sheriff's department. Added the 3 medics for Rushmere Station. Additional funding for schools, and adjustment of the M&T tax revenue. So when you take all of those together, that's how we ended up with, having $100,000 available with all these changes for the schools. Now, when I talked to the school staff the other day about it, it was $522,000 for the step increase program for this year. This year they had $3 million, or they expected to have $3 million in surplus funds at the end of the year due to staff vacancies. And again, they have the same issues we have. You have turnover in staff. You're going to have some vacant positions for a while and some maybe long-term. So I asked him, I said, well, if you can project that a sixth of that amount, 1/6 of that $3 million surplus would fund the step increase, $500,000 out of $3 million. So if we can project that you may have that much available next year, again, I'm sure they have a little bit, we have some every year, then that would essentially fund the step increase. So us providing $100,000 would drop that number down to $400,000 now. And they may know in the next week or so what they're getting from the state. If the state comes up with additional funding, that may partially fund the $522,000 as well. So I think we have a couple of options. By the county putting in $100,000 more, maybe more could be squeezed out a little bit. If the state comes through with some more, and if they can utilize anticipated savings next year. A lot of large organizations don't budget 100% for their salaries. They anticipate that there's going to be a certain amount of turnover during the year, and that's what we've seen this year. They had a large surplus because of lapsed salaries. So it depends on, if you budget 100%, you're assuming that there's going to be someone in that seat 365 days a year throughout the fiscal year, and there's going to be no surplus at all or no vacancies whatsoever. So that's just some items. I mean, there's very few changes here, but there's some are very significant changes. The $350 in M&T tax, that kind of threw a little bit of a wrench in the process because we weren't anticipating that large of a decrease in the machinery and tools tax.
So Randy, as we look at, and right now looking public safety staring us in the eye, There's a whole lot of things that go through, I'm sure, everybody's minds. So obviously the budget's in front of us, but also thinking about what is it gonna look like next year when things are this tight this year. So things that come to mind, positions that have been open for a long period of time, trying to eliminate those. But what is the impact on that for people who are working a whole lot or doing a lot with a little, with a sense of there's no relief in sight? That concerns me, and I'm sure it does other board members. But these are tough times. We're trying to make sure we take care of the people that we have in the seats now. Another part is, again, this goes to public safety. How many SROs do we have under the current grant that we are not paying those salaries? Because I believe that runs out next year, correct?
5.
5. So we're going to pick up 5, if you will, 5 more FTEs right off the jump. We're going to have to somehow find that funding in next year's budget.
Does that expire next year?
Not for the, 27.
Yeah, for the next fiscal year, not this one that we're talking about. I mean, we're going to be, I guess sometimes you don't know if you're kicking the can down the road or you're just doing with what you have in front of you, praying for something better. I think it's probably a combination of all of it. But, to me, we just need to know what's all on the table as we make this decision. And I know that's only one aspect of it, but you said it's 5 positions for SROs? I mean, that's a substantial amount when you're talking about FTEs. And of course.
317,000 what we're getting in the grant.
Gotcha.
And in the future, why can't we get like a forecast, like a 6-month forecast, rather than waiting until we actually get into the budget season? And then we could better prepare ourselves and, decide whether we have to keep a flat budget or another tax increase or whatever.
I agree with you. I think that, though, as a board goes, I'm thinking out loud, should never do that, but here we go, is at the conclusion of this, once we get this budget wrapped up, if you will, that we do basically a hot wash in front of everybody and lessons learned, and I think we could do better, at least I feel like I could do better with some of my concerns on the front side, instead of having staff go working on a budget and then we start throwing things at it and I get it. We things come up to us, our constituents. I'm not saying that it's going to be dynamic, but as much as we can, give a kind of a vision. What is our expectations? What are some of the things? And one thing that came to mind. This really doesn't have to do with budgeting, but then again, it does. With Keurig leaving, I mean, post budget would be a perfect opportunity to look and see from the time they moved into that facility, which I think was a warehouse facility to begin with. At least that's what we thought it was going to be. What type of incentives were given, and I guess at the end of the day, what did we reap out of it?
Right.
Did we break even? When you're asking citizens to be patient or to be alongside of some of these type of projects, stuff like we owe it to them that when the dust clears, and here's a good case that we could do it now because we know when it's going to stop, that we would be able to really evaluate how did we do on that negotiation for the long term, and I just say that goes along with budgeting. Because I think that would also allow us for maybe better discussions or the next board for M&T discussions or et cetera, so on. I mean, when we talk about incentives, when we look at adjusting the M&T tax, for example, this evening, Ms. Roundtree had a good point. There are incentives, but I don't know, those incentives right now also exist at the current tax rate, but I can't tell you, and I should be able to tell somebody, or at least speak somewhat intelligently, on at the end of the day, what do we get for our money? Do we have a company that's just, and I know I'm not focusing on Keurig. I'm just saying, do we have companies that come here, stay for the duration of the incentives and the programs, and then they pack up shop and leave, and we're left as both state, because I think sometimes state puts money into it. As taxpayers, we end up, what did we put into it? What do we get out of it? I guess is where I'm going. So anyway, I don't mean to go on and on,
But you did good. But should we just look at what the county is getting out of it, or look at how many citizens that live in Isle of Wight County that work at these businesses?
I think that would be a perfect opportunity to maybe analyze that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea, too. It gives us the idea to look at incentives and try to target a market that we would be interested in. One who would be a long-term tenant and stay after the incentive is expired, bring the right jobs and also meet the intent of the people who want, for example, if it's a particular type of manufacturing, how to target that type of market to bring it here.
I just think when it comes to the budget, like you had said, like the FTEs, those things, we have to have an idea of what we're already kind of betting on, or that we've already kind of said we're going to do. For example, with the grant, when it was free money there for a moment, it was no problem because we just kicked the can down the road, but we're going to have to address that, it looks like, next budget after this one. So anyway.
With respect to revenue, as it comes to M&T, I think one of the things we might look at is how to increase our marketability in that area, like our current sites, looking at their current site readiness level and what it would take to get from a current level up to level 4, make it marketable so that it's more likely somebody would move into that site sooner rather than later. And then we could increase revenue through M&T, but not through a tax increase, but by having additional payers in the county.
Well, one thing that we have an advantage of is all of the sites that we had that were vacant are all being filled right now. So with the TMG project, the Tower Logistics, they just took the next step on their process to purchase that property. So even at the tier level we were at, they chose that property to purchase to convert to a facility. So once we sell the property, now it's in their hands to do the construction of the buildings. The same thing with the site there beside Keurig. It wasn't a tier 4 site, but someone came in and bought it, and they've already built a building on it. And the property on 258, again, that was under contract as well. So all 3 of our sites are all either have been purchased or in the process of being purchased.
So when those companies are negotiating or looking at coming to the county or whatever, I mean, I would imagine you can't be so transparent because it could affect their what's the word I'm looking for, business model, if you will. But for example, with Keurig being at the end of this, it's a perfect opportunity. Is that fair to say? Because we like transparency, but on the same token, if I had a company and I'm trying to make the numbers work, I don't know how much you can put out there. Is that the case? Is it?
Well, that's usually the case. And especially if they're trying to receive a state grant through the governor's office, we're bound by confidentiality. We can't release their name because otherwise they would make them ineligible for the grant.
Oh, okay.
So we have, and quite frankly, I mean, there are always non-disclosure agreements there when a company's negotiating, because they don't want everyone knowing that they're negotiating.
So that's why you hear some of the project names that have nothing to do with the company's name.
They always have always have a code name.
Just Keaton, one clarifying on the last comment that you made. You said that we don't have any properties currently marketed, or we don't have any to market?
We don't. We have exhausted our supply of marketable products with this, with the latest. Once we sell the property on Route 258, we have another prospective property, but it's going to take some work to make that a marketable product. But all of our readily available sites will have been basically taken up.
Thank you.
In very short order. I mean, they've been on the market for a long time. It's ironic that they're all coming to fruition here with a very short period of time.
Chairman Rosie?
Yes.
So if we've exhausted all of our currently marketable properties, again, my question would be, we're wrestling with a small effective rate increase in the M&T tax, but yet we really don't have any appreciable properties to market. Additionally, we have an FTE that's been vacant for a long time with economic development, but we don't have any additional properties to market. Just seems like 2 really good areas that we could make good decisions on by increasing the rate a bit and maybe not filling an FTE in favor of the public safety FTE for Rushmere. But again, it's my opinion. Not something I guess we have to solve tonight, but that's where I'm thinking.
Well, just to clarify, we don't have any property to sell, but we would be helping the companies sell their properties to prospective businesses. So once Tower Logistics purchases the property, then we're going to be working hand in hand with them to help market their property to prospective businesses. Now, they'll have their own brokers, but then our staff works with the companies to identify what incentives the county can produce, how we can help bring the governor's office and the state into the picture to help provide incentives. So that's where the next phase of the process is what businesses are gonna locate on that property that has been purchased by the private provider. The same thing, we're working with WM Jordan on the 460 Commerce Center. Is being built as a spec building, warehouse, potential logistics center, and prospective manufacturing. The exact same thing happened with the Keurig building. It was built as a logistics center. They've got the same doors on it that you see on any warehouse, but it sat vacant for a long time, and then Keurig bought it and turned it into a manufacturing facility. So that's the type of thing that our staff works with to help the companies that eventually locate there. Same thing for backfilling the Keurig property. You know, we've had, inquiries, from around the region for that property, but we have to work with Keurig before they'll let us in there to actually help market the property for them.
So Keurig does own that building, they don't lease it?
Yes, they own the building. And I think they've indicated that, they want to get everything cleaned out, or relocated before they'll let prospective brokers, so it could be as, late as November before we can really work with them on that. And now maybe things will change there, but so far they haven't allowed anyone to come in and look at the property yet, even though there's a lot of inquiries around the region for it. Because it's an operational building that, once they take their machinery out, someone could come right back in and fill that space.
And to Mr. Jefferson's point about how many people that work on our commercial sites actually live in Isle of Wight, I believe I have seen those numbers from Christie and the Economic Development Department in the past. I don't have the committed memory. I'm thinking maybe it was around 40% of those team members that work on commercial sites live in the county. I could be very wrong, could be off base. But Randy, if you know that number.
Yeah, I've heard of numbers that at the Keurig facility, but and I think it probably varies by industry. So I'm not sure if there's an overall number. We may have an overall number, but I know it varies by business. I know, some of those facilities have had a hard time attracting employees just because of the overall labor shortage. In fact, that when Keurig announced they were shutting down, their employees, I think, were inundated with, options from other places in the region for skilled labor.
And much of that has to do with inavailability of housing, right? In the county?
Yes, housing does play a factor. I know that the Keurig facility had, they attracted employees from a wide area, including North Carolina as well. So they had people commuting to the business.
I mean, we've looked at that model where it shows how many of us travel outside the county for employment, and it's pretty staggering.
Yeah, Hampton Roads is famous for how many
So
people
with regard to the
live
operational
in one
budget,
locality
Mr.
working
Keaton, I
another.
appreciate your due diligence and really all the staff and squeezing the lemon, if you will, and cutting out an additional $139,000 worth of expenses. Upon review, is there any more juice there? Any more expense decreases that you feel like you can put a pencil to?
We can certainly keep doing that, yes. As we get more information, especially as we get, deeper into the fiscal year and get more data on our revenues and expenses, we can certainly keep looking at that.
It's 175.
And then with regard to last week's discussion about decreasing conservatism in revenue, is there any more thoughts there?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Could you repeat that, Ms. Roundtree?
I was wondering if there's any more decreases in conservatism of realized revenue that can be considered.
I think the conservatism is being realized by the M&T tax and the business license. We had to basically reduce those revenues because, and of course, those are actual numbers. We know what the M&T will be once we get all those returns in. Some of the other revenues are harder to project. And of course, with the news this week that the economy actually contracted in the first quarter,
Right.
I'm not sure that we want to reduce conservatism on those because it's really hard to project how the economy is going to act for the rest of the year. We're sort of in unprecedented, uncharted waters right now.
Yeah, and with the volatility that exists there, I mean, even attracting businesses in that were thinking about moving in or filling up some of the spaces that we do have available. They may not want to move right now.
Well, there's already reports of trucking companies having, less business because of less imports coming in, and with the tariffs, it is impacted a lot of different companies and products that, this morning on, I think on one of the news shows, they were going through a grocery store trying to find only American-made food, and how difficult it was just to try to find food that wasn't imported from somewhere else because we're such a global economy.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts, members?
Is there any desire to speak about capital budget and where we stand on that?
Sure. We haven't made any changes in the capital budget.
Do you have thoughts?
I'm watching online and then I'm dialed in on the phone, so there is a slight delay, but I wondered if the current capital proposed expenditure could be put on the screen.
I do have it up here.
Just take a second.
Oh. So there's the revenue picture for the 6.8 million for the capital. I don't know of any other changes we can make there that we know of right now, unless the board added debt there, but that pretty well exhausts all the options we have for revenues.
Was the bond money, was that from different bonds or just one in particular? Do you remember?
That is from the 2024 bonds for the Carrollton HVAC project and the school system. That's the number they gave us, is what they anticipate having left, because the bids came in lower than they anticipated.
Sorry, it took me a minute there.
That's all right.
So my specific question on capital has to do with the email that we received from the school board chairman regarding the bus garage project. Overall total cost, I think you all received that. I think you were all copied. Overall, recommended cost or projected cost of $4 million for a bus garage replacement. I think the current scenario stipulates $856,000 would be required in capital to begin the project instead of $775,000. So that has to do with my current line of thinking on that. And then I think there was some indication a meeting or two ago that we could delay the Nike missile, the $75,000 for that. I don't know that there was overall support to have that in the budget. Maybe we could exchange one for the other. Those are my questions on capital for this evening.
It was 80-some thousand, I think, was 85, I believe, is what it was set aside.
There it is. Yeah, of course, that was put in the budget because previously the board had said they wanted us to do that, so that's why we had put that in the, and we finally were able to get an estimate on the cost for doing the design work and actually fabricating a support beam to hold the missile up.
So the missile project, which again, we didn't realize we were going to be looking at a budget like this. That money can also stay there, the project not be executed until later in the fiscal year in the event that money is needed, right?
And we could do it in phases. I mean, we've had the geotech work done, we've had the site work completed, or site plan completed. So, I mean, you could, pour the base for it and then, get it painted so it's protected, and then, wait to do the fabrication later.
So originally, if I remember correctly on that project, we had private entities that said they would take care of the painting, et cetera, so on. And I know that I'm not pushing it all off on other people, but I think that was the intent. When this thing was pulled into the county, there was supposed to be seemingly a real collaboration on getting it done, with the idea that to the county it was going to be, I'm going to use the term virtual because I don't know what the number was, but virtually no cost to the county.
Well,
That's correct.
And I say virtually, I'm not saying absolutely none.
there was never a plan on how to mount the missile. I mean, there was never a plan of private funds to mount the missile. They brought it over here, they were gonna paint it, then everything else was gonna be left to the
Then
county.
they looked at the base, and the base wasn't salvageable.
Correct, that's right. So there were a lot of things we looked at, but the overall plan's always been to have it mounted so on some type of, steel structure so that it could be displayed. But the painting didn't take place, and so we have had everything stripped off of it. It just didn't be, so the painting could probably be done for, I'm not gonna say little cost, but relatively little cost. And at least get that done, and then maybe go ahead and pour the foundation. You could do it in phases. I think the fabrication of the support beam is what's the bigger cost there.
Staff is usually really good about looking for any type of grants, because that is a certified, you know what I mean, it's
We've
historically.
applied for multiple grants. Museum director has applied for several grants, and we've not been successful yet on that. So, yeah, that's what they have been doing, is trying to find grants for that.
If we could. Again, what you all determine as projects or things that you want to move forward on, we can certainly work with that. I'll just note, and I've noted this to several people over the last couple of months, for capital projects, the cost is not going to go down in the future. And so, if there's a project that you want to pull out or not do, that's your prerogative, but delaying a project is only going to be met with higher cost than you're looking at tonight. And that's my concern about pushing some of these lower cost projects out. The missile project, we projected 85,000 today. It may be over 100 next year when we're having this conversation.
Completely understand.
So again, that's the only concern with continuing to push those down the.
I just, when, we all understand the perception or what it looks like. You're gonna raise my taxes and you're gonna spend $85,000 on a missile you drug over from Hampton. And that's just the way could very well and probably will be looked at. And I know it's, to some people, it's only 85,000, but it's principle.
Has there been any fundraisers come forward in regards to the missile project, or?
There were some possible options early on, but it didn't materialize.
Okay. Because sometimes things like that appeal to a certain segment of our population, and folks might want to get on board with it and raise some funds to go toward it. And certainly, I would encourage that to take place.
They did secure the missile and brought it
Yes.
over here, but that was
True.
quite a bit of.
The hardest
value there.
struggle in this project, there's so much unpredictability right now, and finances, revenue has definitely gone down in certain areas, and so.
This is just one that's lingered for several years. We're just proposing, we finally got a design and an option of how to do it, and so, and I know the board had previously directed us to move forward on that, so
Yeah.
that's why we had put this in here. And there's been a lot of, work on getting to this point to be ready to go for bids.
Randy, one other aspect of there is I look at $500,000 for each medic unit. And I think I know the answer to it, but just so we have this discussion out loud. Not too many years ago, we would have, as a county or as individual rescue squads, applied for an RSAFE grant. And I'm assuming right now there are no RSAFE grants, particularly for
think that's correct.
vehicles.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's
that sounds
correct.
about right, doesn't it?
All those funds have sort of evaporated.
On the heels of all the issues that went off over at the Office of EMS, right?
Right.
Because once upon a time, you at least got maybe a 50-50 grant.
And we've gotten several of those, over the
Oh, yeah.
years. I know, we've got one for the Windsor Medic one time, we've gotten one for Isle of Wight Rescue, so,
Coming back to the bus garage, the school's most recent email to get the ball rolling on that project was $865,000. So greater than that 775, and that included demo, pavement work, storms and pipes, BMP and utilities. It seems they have a pretty good plan to get the ball rolling on that project. I would prioritize that over the missile project personally, or encourage the other areas within the operational budget be scrutinized more to find the $85,000 in order to fund that missile project.
And I think you've spoke to this before, and I think you had a very good point. It's easy for people to, or maybe somebody even from this room, look at a bus garage and say, really, just make do. But you've mentioned, not just recruitment, but more importantly, retention. At least you're making an effort to improve the working environment for the people that are working on the buses, as opposed to relatively stagnant.
Well, as far as the bus garage, as well as just reminded me, so we could probably use some stormwater funds to help supplement that project for the BMP. But we have a cash reserve in our stormwater budget that we can only use for stormwater projects, but that would be eligible project for the, that we could at least pay for the BMP portion of the project.
So the
that would probably
BMP
make a big
portion of that
difference.
was $250,000, and there is their estimate for that, so that would cover all of that or a portion of that?
Probably cover all of that.
Okay, I'd be in favor of that.
So that would, add to the 775 and probably more than cover the project for the bus garage.
Okay.
And could we reflect that on the next iteration?
Sure. Yeah, we just received this information from the school chairman, this past week, so we haven't had, the board hasn't had time to look at that yet.
Thank you.
Just for clarification, Bobby, if you could help out, because in comment that came to us from Jason, this was a statement, and I wondered where we are at and what we can do, can't do, but he's, in terms of school capacity, says the top priority post FY 26 budget is to initiate a joint Isle of Wight County, Isle of Wight discussion centered on school capacities as related to new housing development proffers. And he said, by making that a consideration possibly to increase proffers for development, can we do that? And so,
The short answer is no. The state defines what we can collect proffers for, and it is for schools, it is if a development pushes a school over capacity, and for the purpose of proffers, capacity is, and I'm just going to use simple numbers, if a school has seats for 100 children, and they have 90 children, and a developer comes in with 10 kids, pushing it right to the 100 level, they are not over capacity. They are at capacity. It's the 101st child. And then the way, there is a formula that we have modeled in conjunction with the schools as to what it costs to, if you're going to do a capital expansion for, say, the middle school, what is that per child? What is that cost per student? And then that is the figure that the developer bases his proffer on. When he says, I'm going to proffer $1,900 per unit, that's based on the fact that they're adding 5 students, and then they divide the cost of 5 students over 150 homes and comes up with that, whatever that number is. For the purpose of capacity, as I said, the schools, when they're built, there's a known number that says this school is going to hold 1,000 children. That number is subject to change because of operational needs. If because of, and I'll use some sort of a special ed class can only have 15 children in a class where the classroom would have held 30, well, that effectively reduces the capacity of the school. But that is a number that the schools have to generate. That is, in looking at other jurisdictions, in conjunction with the community development, the schools model out what their capacity is on any given day, because, as Mr. Keaton has said, their average daily membership has changed significantly from their projections to March. So they know what their capacity is, or should know. And so that is what it's based on. It's not something that we can increase. I mean, if the schools come back with a defendable number that says our capacity was 1,000, but our effective capacity is 980, then that's what it is. But they can't just randomly say and reduce the number. There has to be some justification behind that. And as we said before, it also requires that there be a project in the CIP for planning purposes. So right now, our CIP has West Side in it. So that is, if West Side reaches capacity, that is where you go. It is up to the schools to come up with a policy that we are going to seek to add a new facility or an expansion to an existing facility when we reach 90% of capacity, when we reach 85% of capacity. That is not a proffer-driven number from the county standpoint with proffers. That is a planning tool for the schools to determine, and so they then come in with a capital budget item to say we need to add this and it'll be in 2028 or whatever it is. And then that is something that if there is a need because of capacity, that proffers can effectively address. It's the same with any of our other capital items that are subject to proffers. I said, I think those numbers are generated by people outside of my bailiwick. We've hired Tischler Weiss on a number of occasions to do models to study what impacts there are, and the schools have some model that they use, and the issue is, and it's not the schools, it's across the board. We get these large development projects in, and we are time limited by state statute as to how long we have to get a response back once we get those in to make our comments and we send it to the schools. If we don't get a response from the schools, we still have to respond to the developer.
Right.
And so sometimes, in this last case that we've got one before the Planning Commission, they were on spring break. So when we called to ask for additional information, they said, we'll get it to you next week because there wasn't the people there to do it. But that's a long-winded answer to your question.
No, but it was a good answer, and so the follow-up question to that is, I think I know the answer to that is, there's already current projects on the books, that can't be changed. So there's, part of the opportunity that he's talking about here is not an opportunity.
Right. That is a General Assembly question that is being addressed by lots of communities because it is not current capacity plus approved developments that haven't been developed. It is current capacity as it sits right this minute.
Right.
I can speak to that some as well, if it's all right. In our last meeting here, we discussed two of us going to talk to the school board, which was going to be me and Ms. Roundtree, which we haven't scheduled for next week. And that is an item that we're going to talk about. What we want to do is, clearly understand the rules and work on the way that we communicate capacity back and forth between the school and the county. Because there's, as we currently know, the middle school has a number, or high school has a number of classes over in the middle school, which means they took mitigating action to essentially expand the school. But at the same time, they're saying that when projects come, that they can handle that capacity. So they're taking mitigating actions to prevent an overcapacity condition, but expressing that they're not overcapacity. So the way that's communicated to us, I think, could be potentially improved. In general, to express, okay, let's establish capacity for when a mitigating action would be implemented. And then two, looking at the potential for special programs, special education, CTE courses, like the welding school I think has a backlog of students who want to take that course. And there's out of room with that, and other special classes on how they might also include communication of that regarding capacity for development purposes.
I think that'll be a great discussion, because obviously, when you don't hear anything, that's not good. And we do have a lot of things changing in terms of expansion and also special needs classes and counseling. There's I think, opportunity there, and I think the schools might be able to address part of that going forward. It's not necessarily helping us right now, but going forward, it could help us a lot.
And The other thing is, the schools, at least on one occasion, when the new Hardy got built, and they began to shuffle students from one district to another, you're able to look at service districts, just like parks. You know, if a development came into, a residential development came into somewhere in the Camptown area.
Right.
If Camptown has sufficient parks in their service area, it doesn't matter that we're deficient, say, in Carrollton. Same with the schools. If the developments are in the Newport Service District, I mean, that's where our development area is. So if the schools that serve that district become over capacity, it is not, the schools can take mitigating actions and redistrict and do what they want. But if they do that and say they're not over capacity, it's not our job to go any further behind that.
Correct.
You know, it is we are requesting, what is your capacity? And if their service district is over capacity at Carrollton Elementary or West Side Elementary, that is the answer that we can defend. The school says that they're over capacity. You know, but it's got to be something that they have numbers to show us, or show the developer, not us, the developer, that we can pass on. And then the developer makes a conscientious decision. We are going to proffer X, or we're not going to do anything.
Right.
And we're going to ask you to approve it without that proffer. And then it becomes a land decision.
But the issue too is right now with the middle school and the high school, Smithfield Middle High, we have no project in the CIP. And they're taking steps to add classrooms back that were utilized by the band, by the IT department. So that's going to create capacity in the high school by shifting those areas out of the school and freeing up classroom space. Plus, their student numbers are dropping by 190 students.
That's right.
From last year to this year.
But I think, as you said, moving forward, we can have a better understanding, so we're all on the same
Yes.
playing field.
Yes.
Well, that's
And the developers would like to be on the same playing field. They just want to know what they're supposed to be doing. They don't like indecision any more than we do.
Well, there's a lot of confusion, I know, at the school level, because we talked to them the other day, and I think people get the percentage to trigger being in the CIP versus triggering proffers confused. So, see, people have heard 85%, 90% is 100% for proffers. It may be 90% to propose a project in the CIP, but as Bobby said, it doesn't count for proffers until it goes over the 100% level.
Very good. All right, other questions for discussion? That was one I had that had come down to us from Jason. I did note when I was looking at this, it's interesting how certain things get phrased or worded, but, and the pages aren't numbered, but I went through and spent a little bit of time highlighting and adding in thoughts and comments, but, we were talking about, and this is all just review, this is just some of the data, but on the page that has action items just above that, and then we're talking about pay scale and stuff above it, but it says, based on a quick review, the last time our teachers received an increase in compensation related to a step. Well, I think, as I would read that, I would say, based on our teachers received increase in compensation period. And obviously step is a whole different level, but if at that point in time they received a 5% increase. But if you take the time frame from then to through 22, so in July of 2022 they received a 5% increase. July 23 they received a 3% increase. Was not step, it was base scale adjusted. In 24 they received an additional 2%, again adjustment to the base. And then in, that was January 24. Then in July 24, they received a 3% increase, again, to the base. Which if you add all that together, that's a 13% increase from 2022. If you take out the step, it's only an 8% increase over that same period of time. But it's not like they haven't received some increases, and I just wanted to note that. Because some folks feel like, wow, you haven't done anything for the teachers of the program, and that wouldn't be true either.
I don't think the teachers were signaling that they hadn't received anything. They were looking at, I haven't received a personal increase in my salary based on my time in service. They got the cost of living rate, everybody get the cost of living rate, but I have not gotten a personal.
Not in the general industry, you don't.
But at the same time, I think it needs to be said again, that was, in my opinion, why we lump funded them. So they are the experts, they know where their money needs to go. They want to incentivize aides, or they want to incentivize admin staff, or whatever. Whether I agree with it as a citizen of the county, that's another thing. As far as this board goes, here's the money, you're the experts. And I brought it up before, there was money, they could have given us up raise. We didn't tell them, we don't categorically fund it anymore.
Right.
So they used to come up here, I think Randy, one year, we were gonna hold a little money back until we found out what the state was gonna do. Randy, I'm gonna say bless your heart, said that I just took that from the salary area. You said it was the only place I could really just hold it for now. Your intent was not to stop teachers, but at the end of the day, I would just remind you, what we got, and I think emails and stuff, was we can't sign contracts with teachers because we don't have that money. So gone are those days. We gave them the lump money. Now, if they don't have enough money to run their whole show, then yeah, we need to talk. But they can prioritize. If they want to do $500,000 and not do something else to make sure they get raises, and quite honestly, I think this board, if they came up to us and said, we had to do this, this, and this, and we're running short or we have an issue. In fact, I think that was a discussion the year that we tried to hold a little money aside. It wasn't that we were going to keep it from them, even though it's touted that way. The idea was, until you find out what you really need, we're going to hold this just to the side. So again, we dive into the weeds and start talking about merit raises or step increases or whatever you want to call them, step raises. That's up to their administration. Now, if they don't have enough money to make the machine go, then I think we've got to do something. But at the end of the day, they're the experts. That's the reason for lump funding. I know there was people who called me and said, you're doing it wrong. You need to keep it as line item. You keep their feet to the fire. Well, I'm sorry, but they're elected just like I am, and they are the experts. I'm not the educational expert. So that's why I thought that the lump funding was the way to go. So when we talk about things like that, I mean, all we're doing is discussing it, because at the end of the day, I believe, no different than, say, the sheriff's department, not to pick on our wonderful sheriff's department, but you give them $500,000 and they say, yeah, we changed our mind. There's nothing you can do about it, right? I mean, somebody
Well,
correct me if I'm wrong.
theirs is in line items, so we do have a little more,
But-
But yes, you're right.
Right?
Yeah. Well, the one year that, because a lot of times they don't know what their General Assembly number is until well after our budget. So the one year they got additional money, they decided to hire the SSOs that year. And after the board has specifically said, no, that's not our priority, and, there was no
I don't think there
return.
was a step raise that year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so it's, based on priorities.
Two comments on the step raises. Mr. Akey, the last work session, or last meeting, you asked a question if the schools had a step increase program that was specifically targeting the retention that they were looking for. And so two of the school board members have agreed to go off and look at that over this next year and ensure it has the right steps to hold on to the talent as they're trying to target. And then, Mr. Keaton, the $100,000 that you're proposing to increase the county budget for the purpose of the schools, did the schools give you confirmation that with that amount, they could fund the step increases?
No, they have not. I mean, we literally had that conversation yesterday about it more generalized, and then we finalized, after we made all the changes, there was $100,000 we could put towards the schools to partially fund that. I did raise the issue of, can you estimate some of your, if you have a similar year as this year, you could build in the fact that, okay, we can go ahead and pay the step increases because we will probably have X amount of dollars, in surplus at the end of the year from unfilled positions. So I did pose that possibility to them yesterday.
Are they intending to respond to that?
I think they were gonna, take it back to their board to discuss as well. I mean, they've got to, it's basically they've given the budget to their board, so they're having the same discussions we are here, so.
Okay.
We don't have anything else on that. Can we take a 10-minute break and then return? Okay, let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break.
differentiate them a little differently than Isle of Wight. They go by like length. And I don't know if it doesn't matter who it was. I saw one locality does on water vessels, anything over 18 feet is taxed at this rate. Is that, what's that method, or how do we do it, I guess, to cover that? And then maybe you can get an idea of,
I'm not sure if it's by the length. I know that back around 1990, if you remember out in the James River, there were 2 LGN tankers. And we wanted to assess and tax those ships. So the board adopted a rate for, I think if they were over maybe 20 tons, there's some characteristics.
Right.
And so the board has a much lower rate of maybe 30 cents per 100 for that. And then the regular boats are at $1, but it's not based on size or length.
yeah, ours is based on weight, like you had said, I believe.
And it's $1 for what I would call recreational.
Right.
It doesn't say it that way, but and then it's 32 cents a hundred for anything weighing 5 tons or more, excluding pleasure boats or watercraft for recreation. So commercial boats over 5 tons are taxed differently. Everything else is taxed the same.
So that kind of the conversation segued over into things like construction equipment. When you see construction equipment in the county that stays here for, say, a year, crane at the hospital, maybe the hospital's not a good example, but, and I think Mr. Keaton answered this, but just to kind of put it out there, do we realize any revenue from, say, a $2 million crane sitting on a job site for a year and a half?
For business equipment, it is, taxation of site is based on where it's located on January 1st. So I have a deputy that goes on January 1st to the different construction sites around the county. We document, we take pictures, and we get those large items, could be bulldozers, cranes, things like that. If they are not here on January 1st, then we don't get anything. But we do make the effort on the 1st of January to visit construction sites, be it road construction, hospitals, any kind of real estate construction.
So they can have their businesses in a different locality, but if their equipment is here on January 1st, it's taxed here versus where their business is located.
Are there years where that's a significant revenue? I mean, I know.
20 to 30,000.
Okay, so, that's just interesting, because we were, like I said, the water vessel segued into construction equipment.
But then the other question was like, on business license tax, that's based on the value of their contract here while they're working in the county.
Right.
So that's how we get the business license.
For construction.
So like, just like if somebody just starts their own business and they pay $35 because their receipts are not gonna be over a certain amount, the person, if they got a $5 million contract, would do one that's appropriate to the amount that they anticipate on making on it. Gotcha.
We have one contractor that knows we're coming, and they line their equipment up December 31st, so we can take pictures and it's all there. So they work well with us, and we work well with them.
I thought it was, I knew a little bit, like, just enough to be dangerous, but I didn't know the exact on that, so it's good to know. Are there, back to the water vessels, for example, or to boats, if you will, is there any appropriate or responsible opportunities for revenue there that would be, I mean, I'm not looking to grab people's money, but when we're talking about, at the same time, you have to have a house to live in. I don't need a 30-some foot boat necessarily, I guess, a particular pleasure craft. So, I mean, is there things that we should consider that would be in line with, and I don't really like to always line ourselves with the cities, but they have to be taken into account to where it's fair to our citizens.
Prior to 1985, boats were taxed at $4.50 rate. The Hampton Roads localities, we got together, assessors, commissioners, because we began to get some competition. Portsmouth would lower their rate, Virginia Beach would lower their rate. So we all got together, assessed them uniformly, and that's when the Board of Supervisors dropped our rate to $1 around 1985, 88 timeframe. We held the same.
So we're in keeping with most of the localities. That's good to know.
Yeah. Some localities like Portsmouth, they dropped it down to maybe a penny because they were competing with Virginia Beach, and their logic was we can receive gas tax and things what people would buy, having a low rate, bring the boats there,
Right.
the locality.
Mr. Agri, just real quick, the proposed tax that Virginia Beach is looking to implement is $1.50 per hundred on any boat, any pleasure boat over 18 foot. So it's not differentiated by length, it is just any boat over 18 foot is subject to the tax. And the reason there's a backlash is they eliminated the tax on all boats in 2001. So so for the last, 20 years?
No taxes.
There's been no tax on boats, so,
Maybe that's where I saw it in the
yeah,
article.
I think that's probably what generated the discourse in Virginia Beach.
I think when the 450 rate, there was a mass exodus south
There was.
with boats. That's probably why there was so many boats used to be relocated south of the border.
And if you would go back to the machinery and tool chart that Randy passed out, you notice Virginia Beach has like a 0 rate.
Right.
Each locality has unique things. Virginia Beach generates their revenue from tourism. They wanted to get the steel manufacturer.
I was gonna say.
So they put the machinery and tool rate at 0, got that industry there, because that's the only big industry they have.
In that industry there, a lot of that workforce is in Virginia Beach,
Yeah.
it seems, I would say.
So that's why you'll see a 0 rate with their machinery and tools.
So that was for a specific industry.
Yes. It's really about the only manufacturer they had because everything was tourist related, but they wanted to attract that.
Okay.
I thank you for the extra education,
Thank
if
you.
you will.
So going back to our prior conversation with the schools, Randy, and maybe you could generate something for us this week, but they were talking about the potential $4 million project for the bus garage and all, but preliminary costs, they mentioned would be $865K, and you mentioned this evening that could be possibly pulled out, 250,000K could be pulled out of some funds that we already have in our county. And what that would look like would be then they would only need 615,000, right? To start the preliminary work on the project, based on what Jason had offered up. And I'm just curious, just for digesting, but, so if they were looking at getting 250K from the county for the BMP, that would leave it at 615,000 preliminary money needed to start the project, from what he had said in the letter he sent us. And so what that would look like if we budgeted, say, the preliminary costs this year, and then we would be looking at 3.2 million on the next year budget in terms of approval to move forward on the project.
Yeah, and the information I saw, it said 800,000 was for the architectural costs.
It was
BMP.
865K, which
I don't have
include
that.
250K for the BMP alone. And so if we have the 250K, it brings it down to 615,000.
Yeah, you must have some information I don't have, because I have his letter, it just said 800,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll leave this with
Okay.
the secretary, and you can look over this sheet. I can-
That list that, I think an email went out over the weekend, and it just said, of the 4 million requested for the bus garage, only 3.2 million would be applied to the actual facility costs. Remaining 800,000 would be applied to other costs like architectural design, BMP costs, et cetera, So, I mean, we've got 775 in there right now, so we're almost at that number anyway.
Right.
I mean, that's.
Bobby will hand you that sheet.
Yeah, we can certainly adjust that, because like I say, we can use stormwater funds to pay for stormwater fund costs, or stormwater costs.
And that's 250.
So that would knock off, that much. And they don't know until they bid it, so
Right.
that's just an estimate.
anything we can do, that we're just trying to fine
Sure,
tooth comb this whole
absolutely.
situation, and if, we can reduce what goes in this year's unpredictable budget in terms of revenue and move it to next year, because it's gonna take that amount of time to get some of the preliminary studies and things done anyway. It may help everybody in the process.
And we've asked, we talked to the schools the other day about, forwarding information, because we don't always get the information you get.
Okay.
Now, let me ask Bobby while I'm here. If a school board person can send an email to all 5 Board of Supervisor members,
Correct.
they don't have to
Don't
send it
reply
just
all.
to 2 people.
Just don't
Right.
reply all.
You can't
And-
reply
and a-
all.
and a
They can
board-
send it to all 5 of you at the same time
And-
and copy staff.
And a board member, and a Board of Supervisors member can send an email to the entire school board. Just not 2 other Board of Supervisors members at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't see where this came to you. It came to the board members and to Coleman and some others, but I don't think it came to you.
Right, so we're getting, this information is going out sporadically.
Right,
And so
right.
we're not all seeing, because when you were talking to me Monday morning about an email, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about, I haven't seen it. So, anyway, I did want to impress that upon, it would help communication better, so we'll see what you're seeing, and then we can start doing the work on it.
Okay, very good.
Um,
Other discussion on other areas?
I guess just one, I know that there was some discussion briefly even this evening, but particularly before, with the schools being self-funded for their health care, looking at options, I think is probably the best way to kind of capture what would like the school board to maybe work with them
Yeah.
on doing. I am curious if VACORP offers any particular avenues that would help us with that transition, whether it is a policy that would,
Yeah, they don't do health insurance.
the liability aspect of it. If you were, there's gonna have to be money that you're gonna have to, well, anyway. Let's just say there's a $4 million liability. You gotta put the money aside, it has to sit there. Whether it's 4 million, 6 million, whatever. Just curious what options are with VACORP far as, maybe taking on that liability, so you don't actually have to have that money sitting aside or put that money aside. And the reason I brought that up, it was ironic, because I saw where VACORP actually offers some benefits such as, and I guess maybe they underwrite it, they use it, I'd say underwrite it, they use other companies to facilitate it, but I saw they have actually a program, and I think that's how York County does their healthcare with retirement benefits to their employees.
Are they reinsured?
All I saw was on a VACORP flyer. I took a picture of it. I'll share it with you. But they actually offer it as a benefit. You pay into it. It's not just obviously, but there's some, and the reason why I say that is if they offer things like that, maybe they offer some opportunities, or they'd be a good resource to giving us some options on how we get them transitioned out of a self-insured type scenario that seemingly is not very efficient now.
Well, that's what the school system, they've got about 1.3 million in that fund right now. They don't think they're gonna have to dip into it too much, maybe 100,000 or so this year. And then by adding $1 million, it would get them a little over $2 million. And so they feel like it could be 3 to 4 million by the time, if they make the decision to switch over to local choice. And that's always an unknown number, because, you could have a year when you have fewer big cases and maybe you don't have as big a run out claims, or if you have a bunch of catastrophic cases right before the end of the year, then that can be a really expensive run out, so.
I think there's a good opportunity there to work with the schools in order to improve that situation. Of the surplus, $1 million from fiscal year 2025 is going to go towards healthcare, and then there was a $1.6 million increase for fiscal year 26. And that's really causing some budget disturbances in that. So an investment to work with the schools in that area likely would result in a long-term savings to get them onto a better program. I think there's an appetite to work on that as well from the schools.
Now, just to be clear, our health insurance is more expensive than the school health insurance. Our actual premiums are higher than the schools, but we have a lot more stability. We have a better program. So, for example, I think they have like a $2,000 deductible in some cases. We have a $250 or $500 deductible, depending on which one the employee chooses. So, we have our plan is a better plan, and costs do not go up as dramatically. We've had single-digit increases for the last 6 years, probably.
I think what I look at it is, it's less of this may not be a good opportunity to consolidate services as it is to come alongside of them and help them get out of a situation that ultimately is gonna cost our citizens more money in the future.
Right, that's right.
Well, isn't Michelle looking at some options to try to help the school board?
We've been comparing options as far as what our plan is versus their plan. But it's really just it's a dollar figure getting out of that plan, because once you're in a self-funded plan, you have to pay the run out of claims. And I mean, I've been in that situation before, and it's an unknown number. It's a scary number because you don't know what's gonna happen until June 30, and you find out how many claims were filed. I mean, literally, someone has a heart attack on June 30, you're paying that whole bill for the rest of the run out of that claim.
So the 9 million may or may not be accurate that they were talking about.
No, they were saying 3 to 4 million, I think.
Right. But,
That's what, you know what they said?
Yeah.
I bet it's,
Looking at his paper, I'm like, oh, they must have sent him another number.
I've been getting lots of information.
Yeah, look at the dates.
but again, it's just a guesstimate. I mean, you don't really know until you get closer to the date.
I think the $9 million amount is what they pay annually.
That's correct.
Yeah, they had said here, the recommended fund balance should equate to 3 months of health care insurance claims based on 9 million in claims. The recommended fund balance would be 2.25 million.
And by adding the million in there from this year, we'll get them to that, it'll get them to 2.3 million.
Yeah, but the
Yep.
9 million is their annual.
Yep.
Correct. I would like to note, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, that the $1,000 bonus, the schools are planning to use that as a retention bonus, so it would not be paid out to anyone who is retiring or leaving or transferring. They would be using that to try to help retain people for next school year.
You gave us another sheet, and it would basically is what you had told us prior to this, but did you want to say anything about the availability fees for water and sewer, since you gave that to us tonight?
Oh, yes, yeah, glad you brought that up. So I did put together a chart that shows the availability fees for water and sewer for, some of our neighboring localities. Currently, our rate is $4,500 for water and $4,000 for sewer. And you can see down below, Smithfield is $27.20 for water, $41.20 for sewer. So they're in the ballpark on the sewer side, but they're much lower on the water. Now, the caveat is this availability fee. So some localities, they have an availability fee and a connection fee. And the connection fee is, based on, actually making the connection. We don't do connections. The contractor does the connections. So we're focused on just the availability fee and only compared to the availability fee in another area. So basically, it's the fact that we have water, you're helping to pay for the person connected is helping to pay for all the infrastructure for the water system. And in a subdivision situation, the developer makes all the connections anyway. So there's no cost to the county, there's no cost to the homeowner other than the cost of their lot. The only time we get in a situation is when we have these infill lots or lots where, maybe it's been dormant for a long time, a water line, sewer line passes, and then the homeowner has to make the connection to the line. And it can be expensive depending on which side of the road it is on and how deep it is,
So, and I'm going to assume, because I think there was a piece of property that we were back and forth with a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. That's an old water system. So there's a chance when you go to tap in on an old water line that we end up having, the county's gonna have to do some other replacement and stuff. I mean, it gets old and, right, I mean, it gets brittle and that kind of thing. So
Right.
sometimes that happens also.
Yeah, and we've had some that were really, really deep, and we had to bring in a contractor, with shoring and everything to go down, the pit. I'm thinking of terminology for it now, but to go in and go that deep, and it exceeds the cost of the water, the connection fee. So
They have to do all the shoring and everything.
right. Suffolk, of course, is the only one on this group that's really above us. They're currently at 5520 for water, 6,000 for sewer. Williamsburg water is 5,000, sewer is 3,000. Gloucester is 3,500 and 3,300 for water and sewer. And James City County is 3,583 and 3,219. Some of the localities, especially on the peninsula, use Newport News Water Works, so they're part of the system there. So our proposal was to go to 5,000 for water and 4,500 for sewer. Again, it's not the highest in the region. Suffolk is the highest, but we would be equal to Williamsburg on water, and in the ballpark with Smithfield on sewer.
Mr. Keaton, those increases of 500 for water and 500 for sewer, what is the projected revenue from that?
Well, based on, if we have 100 houses, that would be $20,000. All right? No? $100,000, I'm sorry, because it'd be $1,000 in each one. I mean, $500 in each one, so $1,000 per house would be $100,000 additional revenue. 100 times 1,000. 100 houses times 1,000.
Water and sewer.
Combined, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Any other comments, Rudolph? Questions?
No?
Mr. Acre?
Just a reminder, but not about the budget.
You want
Just a reminder, next Wednesday is the Region 1 meeting for VACO. Be held over at the Wakefield Airport. I believe they need you to RSVP if you're going to attend. I didn't see a date for us. Did you get anything on how late we could RSVP for that? Do you know?
The Region 1?
Region 1,
Region
this
1.
next Wednesday. They don't have it online for us.
Oh, hold on, I had it, because I sent it.
What's that?
I don't think it said a deadline.
I didn't see one either. So just,
I sent you the last notice.
yeah, I didn't.
Mr. Stefano.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen any of them. It's gonna be from 1 to 3.
Yeah.
The idea, well, those meetings typically, staff kind of presents quite a bit at that. I say quite a bit. They do most of the presenting. I think it's also to get an idea of what, Wakefield has going on. So it allows them to do a little bit of showcasing, that kind of thing. But, it's from 1 to 3 again on next Wednesday.
I think if everybody wants to get together, they can take the van.
So let us know.
Yeah.
Okay. Renee is signed out. Thomas?
Nothing.
Further comments, questions?
Nothing further.
Okay. If there is nothing else, meeting adjourned.